each year. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, one God, Christ is in our midst.
He is and ever shall be.
The most important point of today's gospel is not to focus our attention upon the presence of the power of evil in the world, of which the Lord demonstrated the exorcising of the demoniacs. Instead, our attention is to be focused upon our choice to first acknowledge God's presence in our life, and second, to know how He has equipped us with everything necessary to be protected from the evil one, and third, how to discern and have good judgment against the forces of evil. St. Paul reminds us in Ephesians that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, against rulers of darkness, against the spiritual host of wickedness in heavenly places. And in writing Timothy, St. Paul also says, "For God gave us not a spirit of fearfulness, but of power and of love and discipline," or a sound mind. Acquiring and cultivating a sound mind, learning to be patient and to give and to respond with a positive outlook, even with what might be intolerable, can only be achieved by being grounded in our faith and values, having peace in our life, and having an aim, which is love. In his letter to the Ephesians, St. Paul says, "Live as children of light, for the fruit of light consists in all goodness, righteousness, and truth, and find out what pleases the Lord. Have nothing to do with fruitless deeds of darkness." He concludes in saying, "Be careful how you live, not as unwise, but wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. Therefore, don't be foolish, but understand what God's will is." This passage immediately precedes the epistle reading in the wedding sacrament, where a man and woman is instructed to submit to each other out of the reverence of Christ, for husbands to love their wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. As Christians, we are equipped, empowered, and protected by the sign of the cross. It is the way we guard ourselves from all forms of evil. And we do not speak of forces of evil in terms of superstition. We regard them as realities, as evil being led by a person called the evil one, or the devil, whose purpose is to kill, to destroy. Being very aware of what can become controlling of our will to the degree that we become callous or lose our sensitivity about what is evil can lead to disregarding everything that we know that is right and good. In our day, many struggle with all kinds of addictive and compulsive behavior. The perpetuation of any compulsive behavior can be difficult to overcome, and this is because change means a great struggle from familiarity with what a person is accustomed to or grown comfortable with, or what you and I might consider intriguing or entertaining. And so without good judgment and proper spiritual guidance, we are easily led to an acceptance and reinforcement of bad behavior. Well, that's just the way I am, Father. I hear that often. That becomes the rationale. It's also evident in what we heard in the gospel today. People in the area of the demon-possessed men, it says, begged him to leave their neighborhood. They were so accustomed to demonic influence in their midst that they found it difficult to relate with those who were in their right mind. In another gospel account of today's lesson found in the 5th chapter of St. Mark's Gospel, the people's response to the man's deliverance was described in this way. Quote, when they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion, which means many demons, in his right mind, they were afraid. Unquote. This might be what you and I are facing today. We have reached the point of accepting not only bad behavior as normal, but unethical and immoral acts as what is normal. Passions control us when there is a loss of sound reasoning and judgment. Personal discipline and self-control doesn't exist. Our passions can lead to obsessions. Compulsive and addictive behavior is what the church fathers speak of as our passions. However, now listen closely. Passions have a purpose if we know how to direct them. St. John Climacus, in his book, The Divine Ascent, in his teaching says, redirecting our passions begins with prayer. First, acknowledging that all of God's created world was intended for good. The goal of passionate love, for example, was for the purpose of procreation. Its perversion is fornication and adultery and infidelity. Food is to be blessed for healthy consumption. Its adversity is gluttony, you see. And the list goes on. It's more helpful for us to avoid spending our time focusing upon the deeds of evil. It's more advantageous to learn ways of protecting ourselves from becoming insensitive and, God forbid, what St. Paul describes in Romans chapter 1 as becoming reprobate, which is what I've described as considering what is good evil and considering what is evil good. That is where many people today live. In fact, there are those, the gospel says, who will be killed with the intention of those who believe that they are acting on behalf of God. Haram. Haram. Our way of thinking and knowing how to respond to situations rather than to react is what we have to practice by practicing nepsis. And if you haven't been attending our Bible study, you have no idea what I'm talking about. That's the key, nepsis, which has to do with attentiveness. It has to do with vigilance that the fathers often speak about. It's watchfulness. His Eminence Metropolitan Philip would always remind us clergy Be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. It's being alert in avoiding what are mentioned in the church's prayers of exorcisms. What are they? There are 4 things. I've said this in years past. For those of you who are new, it's important for you to understand them. First, it's the spirit of error, which means lies, untruths, distortions, delusion, and fraud. Second, spirit of guile, which is devious, manipulative, cunning behavior. Third, idolatry, anything that replaces God in our life. And fourth, uncleanness, physical uncleanness, intellectual uncleanness, emotional uncleanness. One other aspect in the church's prayers of exorcisms concerns evil of, and this strange English word, every concupiscence. Its strict and specific meaning pertains to the prayers of deliverance. A person's misdirected concupiscence that is clouded by distortions, suspicions, controversies, lies, conspiracies, feeds upon one's lower appetite, which is contrary to reason. Very often aimed for gratification of our senses. On the other hand, the goal of concupiscence, when one's aspirations are aimed towards what is good, pertains to one's entire nature. It consists in the subordination of reason to godliness. The fathers of the church speak of our lower appetite being itself unrestrained, such that it's not difficult to pursue sensuous quick fixes, gratifications, independent and entirely absent of reason regarding what is good, proper, right, based on the higher faculties. Consequently, desires contrary to what is good, orderly, and within reason can easily emerge, soliciting the consent of one's will while hindering reason from considering their lawfulness or unlawfulness. In conclusion, we must have sober and clear minds. Avoid being naive about the evil one, who the Bible describes as a roaring lion seeking who he may devour. The antidote is to be sober, vigilant, practice nepsis, prayerful and watchful. And we'll continue talking about this in our weekly Bible study. You may request the recorded sessions on the subject by emailing me. It's been amazing how many have found it beneficial. It's based upon the 2 volumes written by Bishop Emilianos of Australia, who writes in practical terms our ability to practice acquiring the Spirit of God with the practice of vigilance on a daily basis, having a soundly grounded prayer life consistent in our life. And volume 2 is where we are now. These books are available in our bookstore, and volume 3 will be published shortly. Help us